May I welcome to all our viewers joining us on YouTube or at home. This is the service from Eastminster United Church in Belleville, Ontario, Canada, on Sunday, July the 24th. And my name is Magarrell, and the sermon is entitled, Looking Back for Strength to Look Forward. Welcome. We're glad to have you with us. Certainly, we live in a time when we have too much information. I think most of us are inundated every minute of the day or on television with news from some part of the world of another natural disaster or a grievous crime. There are so many that we couldn't possibly list them all. We begin to wonder what is wrong with human beings who perpetuate such cruelty on their fellow citizens or indulge their brutality on total strangers half a world away. There's no doubt that we're bombarded continuously with news overload. It feels like far too much to take. However, shutting our eyes and covering our ears gives precious little respite. When I feel overload with all its sad and depressing news, many of the old song lyrics keep coming back to me. Perhaps some of you are old enough to remember the wonderful Eddie Arnold lyrics. Make the world go away and get it off of my shoulder. Say the things we used to say and make the world go away. Make the world go away is a wonderful thought, but we know the world will still be there no matter what we do. Our task is to find a way for ourselves to cope and to live meaningful lives within the chaos that's around us. Eddie Arnold reminds us to look closely to see the bright side in a later hit song, and you might recall this one. He titled it, It's Such a Pretty World Today. Of course, songs in the years of our youth so often spoke of life changing rapidly when we met somebody special. Eddie sings, It's such a pretty world today. Look at the sunshine, and every day's the same since I met you. The choir could probably sing that by memory. In a later verse, he sings this, And though the rain may fall, our skies will all be blue. And if I look close enough, the sun will come shining through. People remember that one? And I bet you know the verses as well. These songs were overly optimistic, but they do give us some hints of how we cope with situations that are around us. I entitled this sermon, Looking Back for Strength to Look Forward. I'm not sure why we have a tradition of having a title for a sermon. In my experience of sitting in congregations for years, the material often has very little to do with the title. But we often make up the titles well ahead of time, and other things happen. But looking back for strength to look forward is what I want to talk about. It seems to me that we dig back for lessons we learned growing up and in our living through our life's experiences to help us with today. Many here today remember very well the Second World War, 1939 to 45. That was after the war to end all wars in 1914, 1918, which of course did not lead to peace and tranquility. That had been prayed for and hoped for. And then there was another great war to endure. By this time, the Great Depression had created havoc on the world, causing people to be displaced and feeling homeless, hopeless, and without any future. The threat of war revived industry and created new jobs, but at a great cost to nations in Europe and the Far East, where the next war was playing out. No one could understand the horrors of the Holocaust or the slaughter of 20 million Chinese, each carried out by extremist right-wing parties in their particular countries. The sacrifice of millions of men, women, and children affected every family on the planet. How could anyone find love and joy within this horror? And yet we know that they did. And again, it comes through music of the time, as well as the number of war brides coming to Canada with their children to settle with families they only knew by name. There was hope in spite of all of that. You may recall the song, Wait Till the Sun Shines, Nellie, sung by so many wartime singers, including Bing Crosby. I remember when we had this in the community hall at the Women's Institute meeting. And I said to my mother, does anybody really call Nellie? But apparently they are. Wait till the sun shines, Nellie. So wait till the sun shines, Nellie, and the clouds go a-drifting by. We will be happy, Nellie, don't you cry. Down Lover's Lane we'll wander, sweethearts, you and I. Wait till the sun shines, Nellie, by and by. Courage is always a byproduct of war as people refuse to buckle under tyranny and brutality. Great leaders arise to lead where no one else dares to go. You remember Churchill's great cry, we have nothing to fear but fear itself, stirring people to stiffen their determination and never give up. One thing we do know, the world has never been an easy place to be. Yet as in this world we are called to live and to flourish. There's never been a time of bliss and simplicity where everything is easy, non-stressful, nor without pain. Although I rather suspect there's a lot of people around the world who look to our part of the world, thinking we may in fact have some of those elements here. In our reading this morning of the 85th Psalm, the psalmist, who's unknown by us by name, speaks to God about a time when all was right between God and men and women, and God forgave shortcomings. But that blessed period now to the psalmist seems to be a very long time ago. You heard him cry as Phil was reading, restore us once again. Will you not revive us as you have done in the past? Then he goes on to plead, to yearn for God to speak of peace so that people will turn their hearts to God. Surely salvation is near, mercy and faithfulness will meet, justice and peace will embrace, faithfulness will spring up from the earth. The psalmist's prayer is ours today, centuries later. These words of petition were recorded centuries before the time of Jesus. And nothing has really changed in the bewilderment at life's conditions on this earth. Prayers of people speak to most of the same conditions as in the past. The fact then is now is our need to find a way to build a life of love, peace, and joy where we find ourselves. Not always an easy task. In Paul's letter that Phil read to us this morning, in his second letter to the church in Corinth, he again is reminding new Christians that if they feel they're now a part of Jesus' love, they must realize that others around them also are of the same love. Paul was talking about not becoming a sense you're now joined something exclusive and you're better than someone else. This relationship is not ever exclusive to a few, but open to everyone, even people who do not look, act, operate, or speak like you. There's no room for feeling superior to others, according to Paul. If Paul doesn't feel superior with his commission from Christ, how can they feel better than other folk? We're all one before God, each of us sinful and falling far short of the mark. All need to grant forgiveness to others and be prepared to accept forgiveness from one another. Paul, remember, ends his comments with these words. Let him who boasts, boast of the Lord. For it is not the man who commends himself that is accepted, but the man whom the Lord commends. So it hasn't changed a whole lot since Paul's date. People have always searched for meaning in their life and the ability to create a life of peace and joy for themselves and their families and their community. An old saying suggests that not to study history is to run the danger of making the same mistake. We witness this somewhat, I think, in the current presidential election process in our sister country to the south. Politics of fear, hatred, dislike of differences of color and race, blame and oversimplification are rampant again in all countries, including our own. Human rights, justice, fairness, and mercy appear to be trampled in the dust, even in a majority Christian society. We need always to take care not to idealize the past in such a way that we miss the opportunities of today or the possibilities of tomorrow, But we can learn from these memories that please us, that make us smile and move us on from there to action. Summer is an interesting time. I keep asking people when they come in, have you got away this summer? Have you been summer? How's your garden? And so on. Summer is a wonderful time. Next Sunday, I will be preaching and conducting a service of worship on the shores of Canyon Lake in northwest Ontario at Camp Katapatai, owned by the Winnipeg Church for the Deaf. I may have mentioned this before. It's the 50th anniversary celebration of this wonderful facility. And it all came about because of the despair of a caring American woman. From 1964 to 1966, I was the student minister at Vermilion Bay, Ontario, 20 miles from Dryden. It was quiet in the winter, but bursting at the seams in the summer months, with cottagers mostly from the U.S. Midwest. In 1966, as I was in my last month there before ordination, Dora Eastlack from Omaha, Nebraska, and now a widow, asked to see me. Her husband had died 2 years before. She no longer wanted to summer in Canada after 35 years. Unable to get the price she wanted, she asked me if I knew any worthwhile group she could donate her property to. I told her about the needs of the Winnipeg Church for the Deaf, who were searching for a site. In short order, she deeded it all to the Deaf Church. And we're celebrating that camp still being there 50 years later this next weekend. The church still operates what they now call camp, I never can pronounce it properly, Kakapatai. And I am invited to be there to tell the story of how it all happened and to speak of their benefactor, Dora. There's lots of good stories around in the midst of the life that we see all around us. There's still wonderful people doing wonderful things. We do an injustice to life and most of the world's population if we give ourselves over to the fearmongers, the cynics, the naysayers, the dictators, and the gloom and doomers. The action I spoke of by this one woman has brought happiness and joy for 50 years to countless people. Our actions may not be as dramatic as that, but our continuing positive living and sharing with others is what makes the world a better place. Love and caring by each of us is powerful, and it's creative, and it's moving. It's alive. It's the way of Jesus, and we are the followers of him. And we have his example of selfless caring and love. But he was also a man of action, and that's his expectation for us. Jesus said, "Let not your hearts be troubled, neither let them be afraid." As Christians, we're called to move forward, not in fear of what might happen, but to face the future with all the possibilities for good, in spite of the hurdles. Our creed states clearly that we're not alone. Thanks be to God. And may I end today by inviting you to stand and join me in saying together our church creed. As we do so, and I hope the people who are watching us on YouTube will stay with us till the end of this prayer, because it is the creed of our church. It's a moving prayer. It tells what we believe in, but it's also an action thing. And the main thing about this particular creed is to concentrate on the verbs. It's a powerful prayer. Can we stand together and we read together? We are not alone. We live in God's world. We believe in God, who has created and is creating, who has come in Jesus, the Word made flesh, to reconcile and make new, who works in us and others by the Spirit. We trust in God. We are called to be the church, to celebrate God's presence, to live with respect in creation, to love and to serve others, to seek justice and resist evil, to proclaim Jesus, crucified and risen, our judge and our hope. In life, in death, in life beyond death, God is with us. We are not alone. Thanks be to God.